So I'm not gonna do a string for very long, just a short string. I'm just gonna show, probably work on I'll continue to work on the doc manager. I use ChatGPT to create, so I translated first this plugin here, which has a implementation of the doc manager on GDScript, and I translated to C++. Probably not 100% accurate, but just so I had an idea of how it worked. But then I decided to try to do it from, so, like I kind of got an overview of how it works, and then I decided to do it from scratch on C++. And then I was thinking about different ways to do it, and then I decided to just use ChatGPT to build everything from scratch. And the design that ChatGPT recommended, and I kind of went with it in the beginning, is to have a dockable layout class, then have a doc node class, which is a abstract base class, and then a doc split and a doc region. So the doc node is like the base of the tree, and then it can either be a doc split or a doc region. And then the dockable layout's purpose was to create the tree, so it basically generates the layout. And the doc split and the doc region has some drawing logic. So I think I'm gonna briefly show the classes. But then the problem is that it doesn't work in the way that, like, it didn't show anything in the beginning. And then I decided to change the approach because I think that's not gonna be worth the time. So I think for like stuff that is more complex, what I should have done is to think about the approach first and then break down the approach and then go step by step with ChatGPT. I think ChatGPT is not very good if you want to like have a very complex task. You have to think about the overall view of the task and then break down the problems and then ask ChatGPT for specific parts of the problem and then do the thing yourself. So that's what I should have done, I think. And that's what I'm gonna kind of try to do now. So I'm gonna just see if it's streaming first. Let's increase the bit rate. I think it is working. So the way that I'm gonna try to do it now is by this dockable layout class, and that because it's not, and it shouldn't be, I shouldn't spend a lot of time on this, I think, because it should be relatively easy. Like the hardest part is figuring out the drag and drop functionality, which I think I'm gonna try to use this, but I'm gonna try to use the macro because the macro is similar to the way that I was doing on FSView, which it comes from, it just it was a translation from the file system doc class from Godot. But basically these three functions here allow you to implement drag and drop functionality, which are functions that they have on the control class. And then the viewports, as is parsing the inputs, as is like processing the inputs, is going to check to see whether or not the control class has these functions here. And then if it has, it's going to call the functions with the standard arguments that they are supposed to receive. But basically the way that I'm thinking about doing now is that you have this layout mode variable, which is an enum that is going to have the different layouts, and I'm going to have a default one, which is the one that I'm going to use probably on the scene there. So I'm just copying the code that I had on the scene. And every time you have this layout, every time you have an enum on a class, you have to use this macro here to subscribe the struct that the class DB is going to require. Like this subscribes the enum on the variant, creates this struct, I think. Yeah, these structs here that are used by the variant class should translate the types. So this basically allows you to register this on functions on class DB. If you don't add the enum and then you have functions that you want to register on method bind, which is the function that Godot uses to subscribe the class on class DB to serialize the class and to translate the types on signals. If you don't put the macro here with the enum, then it's going to break on the functions you try to subscribe on the method bind. But the way that I have now is I have this function, then this function is going to have the switch, which is going to be based on this layout mode. And this is the part that I'm going to try to cache on the scene file. So I'm gonna cache this property here, and I'm gonna set this property the moment I build the scene. And then based on this property, I'm gonna call this create layout function. And then the layout function is gonna determine which layouts it creates. This one is like a, basically I didn't test this yet, but I just got the parts from the scene that I was building, which is the ID scene. So I just got the parts that are supposed to be the parts that create the dockable components of the scene. And then I put there, and then I created these other functions to simplify so that there isn't a lot of stuff. Also, I think I'm not gonna need the doc manager, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it's not necessary if I have this class here that does everything. So I'm probably gonna put everything on this class and then use this class instead, and then just delete the other one. So this part is the one that I was thinking about now. So I created these other functions here. So basically the tree that creates the layouts is a binary tree that has two different types of components. It's gonna have a split container, which is the class that creates the division, the resizable division between elements. And then it has a control node, which is the class that is supposed to work as a dock. And this basically creates a connection between them, and I created this function to simplify the code here, because I wanted to try to see if I can make them all have basically a standard. But this is the part that I think is the main difference, because before, the way that was being done, I think like it was for more complex layouts, and I think that doesn't make a lot of sense, because the layouts should be simple enough and should be only a couple of them. So like maybe 5 or 10 maximum different layouts you have on the standard, because there isn't too much variance you have on different components that a scene can have. So once I find like some standard default layouts, it doesn't make sense to create a class that is extremely complicated, because the logic for creating more complex layouts should be done into the classes that are going to have the components of the docs. So the classes that are going to be put inside of the docs and not on the layout itself. That's why I think that this approach is probably better than the other one. The other one was basically putting the logic and customizing the logic for the drawing of the splits on the doc split class. And this is all based on ChatGPT with a little bits of refactoring that I had to do to make it work. But it's basically just ChatGPT asking questions to ChatGPT and then translating the code. So that's how it was doing things, I think. So like receiving the nodes on this class here, then has some recursive functions that would change the state of the nodes. And on the nodes, on the split and on the doc region, they had like simple draw calls that were supposed to draw this stuff, but it wasn't working. So like these ones. And I think this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna remove these things, but I think first I'm gonna test on this class here if the other stuff is gonna work, and then if it does, then I'm gonna remove everything else. I think, like I said, the main thing that is complicated is the drag and drop functionality. There's both drag and drop and probably the context GUI that I'm gonna probably get from the editor, the same one that I have, which is a GUI that shows the rectangles with each dock so that you can move docks around. That's gonna be the hard part. So like here, this function creates this split, like the standard split between them. And this is the downside. Like this is the reason why ChatGPT says that it created like these children here, because this allows the class to have like a more than one split by node. But if you use the standard split container, then you are limited by like one division by a node, because every split has to have 2 children, and it's going to divide the space between the 2 children. So it's a different tree structure you're going to get at the end. But like I said, because I think that the layout, the purpose of the layout is not going to be, is not to be something that is very complex. It's going to, like there isn't too many variants. I think it doesn't make sense to, like the split container is probably good enough, I think. But the challenge with this is that how do you build the tree, and then how do you reorder the nodes when you're supposed to drag them around? That's the part that I'm going to try to figure out. That I'm trying to figure out now. I basically translated the code. And then here is another thing. This is the last thing that I was thinking about today. Is I have this function here because I think every time. So this is the first one that I'm thinking about because I want to do things based. Like in this situation, I'm using panel for the docs, but I want to be able to. I'm going to create more functions, obviously, and then I'm going to think about like different containers for different parts of the thing, and then maybe this this is going to be a variation of the enums. So like I can have the same layout but with different with different nodes for the docs. So I can have one that uses panels and the other one that uses tabs at specific places. And I think that every time that I will have a variance, I can just add here. And what I have to do is for each doc that I add, which is going to be these panels, which are the leaf nodes of the tree, I have to keep track of them on this class here, I think. And then I have to figure out a way to set properties on each one. And I was thinking about using a hash map, I think. Because like the simplest situations, the obvious situations that you have, in order to add the components on the docs, you need to know where they are on the tree. Then obviously it makes more sense to have this. So like create a function that based on the doc nodes. That's why I think the hash map's probably the easiest way. Like you, and then I was thinking about like if I create a hash map, I probably need a static int on the class. In order to increase every time that you create a node, you increase the index, and then you put a new integer on the hash to the control. And I think the making based on the names is probably not very good because it's not very reliable, I think. But if I make it based on the hash map and the static int, the thing about the hash map is that I don't wanna. I wanted to avoid using the int. I think like the static ints, but I'm not sure if there's a way to do this. And the vector is probably not very good because you have to loop over every time you wanna do something, which I think is probably not ideal. So obviously, like I'm thinking about. So let's say the hash map with the static int. I put inside of this function here. Yeah, probably inside of this, I increase the variable, and then like each doc is gonna have a specific int that a specific index that I can access, and then from outside I create another function, or like from here I create another function like set name on the set doc name, for example. Then I access based on the index. And pass the name. And this is the simplest example of the stuff that I need right now because of the icon sidebar contents. This is the doc that needs to have this name so that it works with the icon sidebar to change the contents of what shows there. And then the obvious one is going to be add a child to the doc as well. So that one would get, then obviously this one would use the index to get the doc, the control node from the hash map, then set the properties to the control. And the other one would add the node as a child, obviously. And I think I'm gonna do, so I'm gonna compile and then run, and then see if it shows anything on this thing. I'm using another thing. Oh, this is another thing that I wanted to see. So like on this class when I was doing, I forgot to set the name on the class. And if you don't set the name on this, the root of the scene, if you create the scene from code in the way that I'm doing now, it gives you a warning because of the editor. So the way that the editor builds the scene, the root node needs to have a name or something like this. It was something along those lines, but I forgot on this case. And then the problem is that if you build the first time without the name, it's gonna keep giving a warning because they got caches, I think. But I forgot exactly where it caches. Maybe I just delete the files here. Yeah, I think was this is the thing that I'm using now to tasks, doc manager tasks. I'm gonna delete this, copy, and then this thing is gonna be just the dockable layout for now. So the way that I'm thinking about is that this class is gonna build the layout portion of the tree, and the limits of the size of this is gonna be obviously based on the limits of the control node that is this class, because this class inherits from control. So this is gonna allow me to put this class in whatever parts of the scene I want, and then the class is gonna have the functionality inside of it to create a tree that is gonna split the space based on the split containers, and the doc nodes, which are gonna be any type that I want, because they're gonna be control on the class. And the hard part, like the thing that was there are two different things that are hard. One is to drag and drop and to reorder the nodes of the tree, and the other one was like to create the algorithm that creates the tree of the split, because it is a similar thing with volume bounding volume hierarchy boxes, which is like a data structure, a tree data structure that divides the space. So based on the logic of the nodes, you put the decision what heuristic you're gonna use to subdivide the space in different parts. And this is basically the same problem here. So like you're dividing the space based on split containers. And I think that this is the reason why the plugin also uses, so it's probably both because the plugin uses, so ChatGPT probably has data from the plugin, and that's why it's probably biased towards this approach. But it's also because it kind of does make sense, like because if you want to create the tree using algorithms, you need to have a common node, because obviously the functions you're not going to be able to put the different nodes unless you make more arguments, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think usually the way that it's going to happen is that you need to have a base class that has a common type between the different types of nodes you want, and then you just basically use inheritance to determine what the node is. And the other approach would obviously be to have the information as variables of the class. But the problem with this is that it's kind of annoying, because then like it would be a waste of resources, because on the nodes that are not split containers, for example, they would need to have a texture 3D, which is kind of a waste of memory. But I think on this way that I'm doing, it doesn't matter, because I'm like manually creating the tree on the algorithms, and I think that they are not complex enough to incentivize me to try to create based on the other approach, which is to use a common node. So maybe should delete everything already. I think I'm just gonna delete these functions, and I'm gonna do this approach because I'm pretty sure that this is the best. The functions there are probably complaining because of the type, that I changed the type of this is control instead of doc region, which was the node that was being used before. Might complain about the layouts as well, but I'm just gonna delete if it complains. And one of the reasons why I thought about this other approach as well is because like as I was thinking about how to solve the problem of this class is not drawing anything, I was thinking about getting the functionality from the split container and then putting on this doc split class. But then, like, what is the point? Like, it would take a lot of time, and then, like, I can probably make it better by making the logic not rely on the children, and drawing a different kind of splits, or based on the state of the class, like, or creating a different class. But I think it's just not worth it, probably. Oh, this one is used on the drag and drop. I'm just gonna. I'm gonna have to see how to solve this part here, because this one I also got from ChatGPT, but it's becoming more clear on my mind how it works. I think I'm gonna have to use the part that I'm not sure is that's on the FS view. So ChatGPT recommended the approach of calling the function directly, but on FS view they use a macro to set up this as functions. You set forward or something. Yeah, this macro here, set drag forward, which a lot of other classes on Godot uses as well. And then here they are passing this from object, and from is the object, the tree that they initialize there, and then the to is the class type that has the callback functions. So I think that the difference is when you call the macro, is gonna bind the from, which is the object that the event is probably happening on, which I think is probably what I should do there on the other one. So, but the question is where to put the macro, and I think probably it's gonna be on that doc node function. So every time that I add a node, add a doc to the scene, I pass the node as the first argument here, and then I pass the type of the dockable layout to this. Because the logic of the functions are going to depend on this. So when you set there without the macro, it doesn't bind anything by default, obviously. So I just bound the instance of the class, and I think that's probably not. I think it messed up the logic there, probably. Yeah, but I think that's you need to think about. Like, it makes it easier probably to think about the logic of the functions if you have the from nodes here. So like the first function that you declare. So here I had to do this bind this here to bind the instance, and I wasn't calling the macro because I wasn't sure what you put as the first argument of the macro in the beginning. But these are the three functions that are going to be called during the cycle, and then you can use also the notification. There are two different enums on the notification function that are also related to the dragging. So I think it's drag begin and drag end or something like that. You can put additional logic on. But this one is you're supposed to implement the logic. So if you use the macro, if you use the macro, you are going to receive the from object. In this case, the way that I'm thinking about doing would be the doc node. And then you're going to receive the point, which is probably where the dragging started. Or maybe it's like the point throughout the whole thing. Because this one, you're going to get the data. So I think on this function, I need to get the... but if I already have the from... Like this also, it allows you to set this, to call this set drag preview, which creates the GUI element of what's going to show when you're dragging the object. So the question would be if I need this stuff here. So I guess I can just keep this logic probably. So just check to see if the point was on the object, was on the doc, and then return this if it was. Then the other function is you have to implement the logic that is gonna say whether or not you can drop the elements on the area. And I think this one I have to get the rectangle from this class here, which would be get rect probably, and probably get the rectangle for the this is the question, I think. It's like how do you know? So the variant here is going to be what you return on the first function. I think the point is probably where the mouse is located at, and the from is probably the from class where the event happened. So I think here I need to get the which doc the point is at to get the target region. Yeah, so it's basically what it's doing here. So I think this check is probably gonna be good enough. You just need to change the types probably. And then the drop data is what's gonna happen after you drop. And I think this function is gonna be the one that is kind of hard to figure out, because on this function I think what I have to do is reorder the tree structure so that I have the new split. And I think I'm gonna have to spend a bunch of time thinking about this because the hard part about this is that obviously it's gonna depend on the layout, and I need to make it so that the logic is based on something that is never gonna change, which is probably gonna be the variables of the class. So probably gonna do it based. So I think I should have like a thing for the splits here as well, split container. So I should keep track of the splits and the controls, I think. The question is, do I need need to know the tree structure? I think probably not, because I can get it from the vectors later, probably. Maybe we should have the roots. So based on the way that the layouts work and the split containers work, yeah, but I also actually I can't guarantee that the leaves are always gonna be panels. Like obviously I can because I'm gonna build manually, but I think that it only makes sense to have the leaves as the panels, and then the branches are gonna be split containers. And the question is whether or not do you need to is better to cache something. I wanna focus on the other stuff first. But I think that's the hardest part, figure out a function here to drop the content. So it has to be based on there's also the direction of the split that matters. So it has to be on the rectangle of the target and where the mouse is at in relationship to the target region. Then the direction of the split based on the position of the mouse, and how to restructure the tree after the drag happened. Because one thing about the plugin as well is that I didn't spend enough time to really see if this is the case, but I do think it is. That when you change the docs here, it doesn't change the structure of the tree. It keeps the structure the same. So this is another concern that I have, is that if I do it in the way that I'm thinking and I change the position of the nodes on the tree, if they're gonna mess up some of the classes, because obviously depending on the class, there's gonna be logic on the destructor and logic on the constructor, and it might mess up the state when you're moving the docs around. So I think it would be better if I could figure out a way to just visually change the way that it looks, but not run the destructor. But I think that's probably not possible, because the split container logic is not possible unless I have the custom logic on the split, but then it requires the more complex algorithm, I think. It requires a more complex way to do it. So I think that probably is better to start with this way and then think about if I need another way later. And because, like I said, it's probably not something that I should spend that much time thinking about. Should be easy. I think this will simplify a lot as well. Think I don't need this. Not change everything. Never. I don't need this as well. Just the phone. But looking back at it, I should have done this in the beginning. This is not the first time that this happens, but at least right now with the current LLMs that's on ChatGPT specifically, the best way to use it is to do the thing with your own input first, then structure the overall thing, and then for each block of thing you want to do, then you should ask ChatGPT, then see if it's good enough, and then refactor if it isn't. So basically what I'm gonna try to do here. So when it gets the time to, the only problem with this is that you have to spend a bunch of time thinking, or not thinking, but like, yeah, probably both thinking and writing the prompt, because you need to add a lot more context so that ChatGPT understands. That's probably what I'm gonna try to do is when I get to that point of creating the drop function, then I'm gonna think about how to ask ChatGPT for something and then see if it makes sense. Then it iterates and try to make it work. So I should cast this. I think this is gonna simplify a lot probably. So the way that I plan on doing this is based on, it's all gonna be based on layout modes, the only variable I think that I need to set on this class. Then based on what I set on this, so obviously I'm gonna put this on another place as well. So probably when you set the layouts, I'm going to put the functions to build the or to call create layouts again with the new layouts. And I might remove from the constructor of the class and put on the ready, notification ready. Maybe in the constructor as well, because I think that the way that it works from when after you save on the scene and then it's gonna run from the scene state, it's going to update the state of the class first. So when you update the state of the class, it's gonna have the layouts. But even if I put on the set, then it's gonna work, I think. It might be annoying though because of the add property. So to add this stuff on the class DB might be annoying because of the enum. So I might have to figure out a different way to do it. But I don't think that's gonna be that big of a deal. And then what I'm gonna do is that for each thing you pass a layout that I'm gonna probably think about like different layouts. So manually build the layouts from here, or even build the layouts from the editor. Then once you have the layouts from the editor, you have the tree structure, then you translate that into code, and then you run the class and see how the layouts works. Then for each scene, you start. It's not gonna be a lot of code, I think, for creating the scenes. It's just gonna be this layout that is gonna have the structure. Then probably like 2 fixed nodes outside of the layout, just gonna be the navbar and maybe some other nodes that's like fixed on the scene. And then The other ones are gonna be just basically calling the layouts to put the other elements that are gonna be the components of the scene by calling the layout function and then putting each one on the docs based on the index. And I think this approach is probably better because then it allows me, if I want, I can connect the signals outside of the scene between the different components of the tree. But this is another thing that I was thinking about. Maybe I should create another. I think I can do both. I can create a function or create functions on the layout that are gonna create the paths between the different islands, which like the layout's kind of like the structure of the landscape, let's say, and then like each component is its own island, and the communication between the islands are the signals. So I can have a function on the layout that receives the names of the classes, for example, and connects the signals on the notification ready or something like this, based on the docs. So like the layout manager would create the layout based on the enum, and then you would have the indexes of the docs on the class state. Then you would put the classes based on the names maybe, and then you would connect the signals based on the functions. But I think probably this way is gonna be better. So just have the layout in the beginning, then I add the nodes of what components I want to be on each dock, and I externally connect the signals between the different nodes through the function that creates the scene. I need to make sure that I use add-child external when I'm adding the nodes to the docs. So on the function of the doc that I create, that's gonna add the children of the doc. And it choose add-child external so that it saves the nodes on the final scene. But maybe this will be a problem. This might be an issue actually. Because the issue is the order in which it creates each thing. So if I add and the class doesn't have, it's gonna be a problem. And maybe what I'm gonna have to end up doing is to use the names instead. But this is gonna be, it might be very annoying actually. So maybe I'll have to think about a different way to do this. And it goes back to the fundamental issue of not being able to serialize what happens outside. So it's like about the line between the function that connects the classes and the classes, the logic. And now that I think about it, this might be sure. The problem that I'm thinking about is that I have to, like, if I'm gonna add the nodes outside, then I need to make sure that the layout is created first, and then you add the node, but doesn't make sense. Or I can make it, I think what I'm gonna have to do, yeah, but then it's still kind of bad. This might be very annoying. This is the warning that shows there with the thing. So I'm not really sure why it didn't go away since I deleted the cache thing. But it looks like it's not working. Hmm. I think it's because of the difference is on the other scene. I have a HBox container, I think, that the layouts are inserted on. So this might be an issue. I think like the problem is I have to spend more time thinking about because of this. I think that this is a very big problem. I'm not really sure how I'm gonna fix this or think about because it might require me to design the whole thing again. Because like the issue is how do you connect the nodes outside to the docks? Because there's gonna be a big difference between the final tree state and the creation of the tree. So like the moment I run the code from C++, it's gonna create the class and then it's gonna create the layouts and then it's gonna put the children on the docks. But then it's gonna save the scene state based on that structure. But then once it tries to create the classes again, it's not gonna have the nodes. I think you should probably test this first, but I'm gonna see if I can, or how can I solve this other thing here. Like this code that I'm doing to create this layout now is basically copying from the scene, the original scene that I had, which is very different. Is basically the IDE scene. So I'm getting this part here with with 4 different docks here and 3 different splits. This is the part that I copied. I think the difference is that on this one, they are children of this HBox container. And probably the HBox layouts is the thing that's, yeah. So, but the problem is I think I am, oh, I'm not explaining this. So maybe that's what I should try to do. I'll try this first, then I'll think about it. It's weird that the splits are not. So maybe I should put vertical equals false. This is something confusing that I'm not really sure like how they, because it's based on the way that they designed the class there, and it's kind of confusing to me the way that they did it. Is that I think that the vertical creates a horizontal line between them, or something like this. But it might be that I'm just getting confused by the things there. But I think here I put vertical true by default. So maybe I'm gonna test what happens if I pass false. I'm gonna test this first to see if it's gonna take the whole space. What I want to achieve is that this document layout node takes the whole space of the whatever I want to put this thing at on the scene, and then on that space is gonna subdivide the things on a predictable way, so that I can get the docs and get the drive split container. I think once I figure that out, then I can just reuse this for all the other things, and that the difference between the things is just going to be the components, like on the complexity of the components that make up the parts of the docs. I think that probably the biggest problem is this thing about the relationship between the nodes that I create outside of the dockable layout, and then how I'm going to reconstruct that. Because like the easy way that maybe not easy, but the most straightforward way to solve this that I was thinking about is to make it in a similar way that I was making I think it was on global signals class. Like you make everything based on the names of the classes, or like the name of the type of the class, because you can use class DB based on the name of the type to build the object. So But the reason why I don't like this very much is that then, like the dockable layouts would become like I would have to put all the logic inside of dockable layouts to create any scene possible. I'm not really sure if that makes sense. Like, I can obviously create a function on dockable layouts that receives the name of the classes. They're supposed to put the name of in the index, let's say, for example, and then I can save that on a dictionary or something like that, or some variant class to cache that information, and then based on that, I would put the classes on the specific thing, specific doc. But I'm not sure if that's a good idea. So it looks like it is not taking the whole thing. Maybe it's because the base is a panel. But I think that's probably not gonna change anything. Yeah. It's still gonna change. Maybe it's because this is anchor and not position. So let me see if I can go back. I'm gonna open again just so I can start from the beginning. So maybe I should do it from code actually. I'm gonna put the other classes just see if it changes anything. So I'm gonna put um, hmm. Actually, now that I think about it, it's probably better to make it so that then what would be the point of this? And maybe I just create the functions and I don't have the class. That might be better. Now that I think about it. Because like there isn't gonna be anything that is actually the main thing is the drag and drop. That's the reason why I think. The main reason to have the class is for the drag and drop. I think that I can take the functions outside of the class. Because obviously like the functions for the initial layouts, the functions are the only thing that matters. But the problem is how do you make the drag and drop work? I think that's the main reason for having a class, for having the class for this, is the drag and drop. So maybe I can try something different. I can I can make this class to subscribe the nodes. Hmm. I'm trying to think about a approach that allows me to like decouple these nodes from the class. So like I can have the function inside of the class, then the function creates the nodes, but then the nodes are like are parts of the outside of the class, let's say. Like I use the function inside of the class to change the state of the class based on the layout, but I keep the nodes outside because then it allows me to create the tree structure outside. But then based on the structure or based on the state of the layout class, I can implement the drag and drop functionality by having the data for the nodes that are the docs. But I'm not really sure if that makes sense. Because the biggest problem doing this here is the connection of the nodes. I think I need the states of the layout for implementing the drag and drop here, but I don't want to couple the structure of the scene tree with the class, because then there's this problem. Hmm. I'm gonna. Oh, the thing is not to change the name as well. So I think this is the roots there on the other one. I'm gonna add this. Should add one by one probably. Let's try this. So if it doesn't work, I'm gonna try to add the parents of this one and see if it works. Just see if it's gonna create the same structure that I had on the ID scene. But I don't think that this is that big of a deal to solve. The hardest part is the other parts. Figuring out what is the best way to create this. Should I create the tree? How to design this class so that it works outside? So I can create I think it's probably not a good idea to make everything based on the names of the times, because I think that's like there might be situations where I do need, like, it's just gonna be a lot easier to have the instance of the object the moment that I create the scene to connect the objects with signals, or to do different things that might happen. So it's probably not a very good idea to put everything inside of this class here. I think intuitively it seems as it's probably not the best. So I think the best approach, I think, is probably gonna be somewhere in the middle, like this, because the problem is that I need to use the class to. I think the main purpose of the class is to restructure the nodes. So it's the drag and drop functionality. And that's the main thing. Because for the layout alone, I can use the functions. Like I said, I can create functions outside. I can make it based on the arguments instead of the way that I'm doing here. So I can receive one node that is being created from the scene here. Then I create the whatever layout structure I want inside of the functions, and then I make the functions be the layouts. I think I have an idea. But then how would I make? I was gonna say I can create the class and just add the docs as a child. Maybe not like both the docs and the splits. The two problems. One is that I would create the things twice. Like it would take too much memory, I think. Hmm. I'm not sure now. Because essentially the information that I need is the tree that has the splits and has the docs. Then I need to just change the tree based on the events. It didn't work. It might be because of the logic of the class. I think that's probably that might be the reason. Like because these are control nodes. Let's see if I try to change. I don't think it worked. That's I don't understand the logic for the control nodes, like the in depth of how they work on the like the and a lot of them are kind of weird because they rely on the structure of the tree to create the layout or the like the organization of the space. So it's very unintuitive to work with. And I think on some situations, and the thing is that I don't understand very well how they work yet, because I didn't spend too much time on the like inside of the source code of each class to see how they work. But I know that like there are a lot of situations where just by changing the type of one of the nodes or changing like slightly the way that you are putting the nodes together, it completely changes the way that the scene looks, which is very annoying to be honest. Because like for creating something like this that's like more generic, it is kind of annoying. Because the problem is that you never know what like there's no way to know what the final scene is gonna look like and what the classes are gonna be are gonna work, how the classes are gonna work. So like it's hard to find nodes that are gonna be generic but also like give a predictable structure regardless of which thing they're at based on the way that this works. I'm not trying to add the other one and if it doesn't work regardless of whether or not it works, I think I'm gonna stop streaming now because I wanted to do a short stream today. But then I'm gonna spend a bunch of time probably off stream thinking about what is the best way to figure this out. It would be better. I'm just doing this to see if it's gonna look the same as the other one, the scene. But I think either way, I have to think about a way to make this work without anything like it has to work just based on the classes alone, like the split container and the control nodes. It should work based on that, and then based on the design of the parent, which is this class here. I think I have to make it work based on this in order to be predictable. Because obviously I don't want to add like a bunch of nodes on top of the layouts because then it just makes more complicated, which is very annoying. So last thing that I'm gonna see now. It might be because of the VBox, because the VBox is gonna organize them on the vertical. I guess like this is the problem that I'm trying to explain. It's like if I design the class in one way, and then like the node that is supposed to encapsulate the dockable layout changes based on whatever nodes are outside of it, then it's gonna be very annoying because like there can be one scene where I'm gonna have to rethink everything because the node that is a parent of this class here forces or changes the entire layout structure, and that's obviously really bad. So like the question is like how do you structure this class here that's gonna encapsulate the whole thing to be isolated from the rest of the tree? So that regardless of what's happening outside of the class or of where you decide to put this class of the custom layout, it doesn't mess up the structure of the layout itself. But I think this might be happening because of the way that the way that the split container class works, and probably the way that the panel class works. I think that they are probably gonna depend on the position and the information of the parent nodes because of the way that the Godot designs the UI nodes. Yeah, so it is because of the parent nodes. Obviously, they are on the wrong split here, but I think that if I change the split type there to vertical, or to the opposite, I think that is vertical by default. This is the part that I thought that I said that is kind of weird. I think if I change this to false, then it's gonna be on vertical. So I think that's it's kind of the opposite. That's why it's kind of confusing. So if you say the split is vertical, it's actually gonna split horizontally. Not really sure if that's the case or not, but it seems to be the case. There's also one split missing here that's supposed to be dividing the other one. But it might be because of the property there. Or maybe they are, maybe it is. No, I don't think it is. Yeah. So I'm gonna stop streaming now. I'm gonna think about the main thing that I'm thinking about now is not only this. So I'm probably gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna see if I can figure out a way to like make the thing take the whole space of whatever it's put at without relying on external control or like isolating the thing. See if I can do that. To isolate the layout node from the rest of the scene. Now this is one of the main things that's kind of hard to figure out. I'm probably gonna have to spend time studying the source code of the classes to understand more how they work. But the other thing, which I think is even harder than this, is figure out like what is the best way to do this, like to structure the structure of the scene. I think is better, and obviously I'm not 100% sure, just intuitively speaking. I think you probably in most cases it will be better to decouple the structure of the scene, the creation of the structure of the scene with the state of the class. So I think that the ideal situation would be that I use the class to create the layout structure, which is part of the structure of the scene, but the structure of the scene is not dependent on the state of the class. That would be the ideal. And then the main purpose of this class is to implement the drag and drop functionality. So that's what I because if it wasn't for the drag and drop, then the best approach would probably be to put the functions outside. This function is here, and then just spend time creating subtrees from the main tree that would create like the kind of layout that I want with the different components. But because of the drag and drop, I think the class is probably better because the class allows you to implement the algorithms that are going to change the tree. So I'm going to think about how to achieve both these things. How to make the drag and drop work based on different layouts, and where to put the structure of the tree so that I'm able to serialize the tree. But I think first I'm going to think about this problem here that if I don't have these classes, then it doesn't show the thing the correct way there. Even though I have the expand here on these ones. It might be because of the size. I mean, maybe it's because I wasn't, yeah, but this one is, I'm creating using the other one. So it was expanded. Or I think that probably I'm gonna have to compromise on this and then put the, but the thing is on the plugin, I think that they use control nodes and rectangles probably to create. But I do think that they put minimum sizes. I'm pretty sure that they do put minimum sizes on each one. And obviously I don't want to rely on a fixed number to put the size of the parent component because it depends on the size of the window, I think. So it's better if I can use the flags of the classes, or I think if I can't figure out a way to make it work with the control or the panel, I'm just gonna use the VBox or the HBox to work as the roots of the layout. And then I think the rest of the classes take that into consideration. Probably that's what I'm gonna do. Yeah, but I'm gonna stop streaming now. Probably gonna stream soon, probably. And then next time, I'm just gonna continue to try to make this work, probably. So see you then.